Good evening. Good to see you this afternoon, tonight, evening. Glad you're here. Hope you've had a good day. Hope you had a good day. We're going to be in the book of Judges again. We got about maybe two more, something like that, lessons from Judges. We'll be looking at that one more tonight. We'll begin with the opening prayer. And Ryan McGee, would you lead some prayer, please? Well, in the book of Judges, we're no longer talking about the judges themselves. Samson is the last judge that's mentioned. And where Judges goes now, it begins to talk about some events that happen in the book of Judges. No particular date is given when they did happen. Some of them could have happened at the very early part of Judges, just after when Joshua was still the leader. Some could have happened later on when after Samson died. But these are events that happened between chapters 1 and chapters, you might say 18 or following the end of the book. And we're going to look at one tonight and another one tomorrow, next week as well on this. But in chapter 17 verse 1 and 2, now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, the 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears, here is the silver with me. I took it. And his mother said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my son. So here we find an event between a man by the name of Micah who stole some silver from his mother. 1,100 shekels. Pretty good bit. Well, his mother didn't really know who got it, or maybe she did, but she puts a curse on it. I don't really know what that involved, but it was a curse, probably something like, for the person who stole this, may their life be full of COVID or something like that. I don't know. But the son hears it, and it sort of shakes him up a little bit. And the more he thinks about it, the more he says, I don't want this. I'm going to go back and tell Mom I'm the one that stole it. I give it back to her, and he does. And she thanks him, and then she says to him, may the Lord bless you, my son, for what you have done. You come around. In verse 3, so when he had returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son, to make a carved image and a molded image. Now, therefore, I will return it to you. So she tells him, I was going to give it to you anyway. And I was hoping that you would make some kind of idol with it, some kind of image, something like that. And understand now, this is Israel we're talking about. Israelites, Jewish individuals, children of God, and here they are, wanting to make these images, and idols and such. But here she's saying something contradictory. I have wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord, that be God, but I want you to make some carved images. God doesn't want that. That goes against the 10 Commandments there. Have no other images before you, no golden, no carved images, anything like that. So here her words and her actions are not playing out. She wants the best of both worlds, and God is not pleased with that, not liking it, that she's going to be doing this or wanting to do this. So again, her words and actions don't match. Then in verse 4, thus he returned the silver to his mother. Then his mother took 200 shekels of silver and gave them to the silversmith, and he made it into a carved image and a molded image, and they were in the house of Micah. Well, earlier, it was going to be 1,100 pieces. I said, I'm going to give all 1,100 pieces, for this. Well, when she gets it back, all of a sudden it shrunk to 200 pieces. Well, I thought about this. I'm just going to give a smaller amount for these images to be made out of. So her greed begins to take over. A little greedy here. Had good plan. Well, not really good plans, but her plans to give it all of a sudden changes to a smaller amount. And her intentions began to change. You ever heard anybody say, or maybe you thought it, if I had this amount of money, here's how much I would give to the Lord. I would do this is what I would do. And then maybe all of a sudden they have that amount, and then suddenly, let me think, maybe a smaller amount. The greed kicks in. And they don't give it quite as much as they said they would if the Lord had blessed them. Well, maybe it happens, and all of a sudden it's a smaller amount. That happens. It's sort of like Ananias and Sapphira in Acts. Now we got all this money. We're going to sell the land for this amount. Here's what we're going to do for it. But greed kicked in, and they lied about the amount, and it cost them. And sometimes our greed overcomes our promises that we make to the Lord. It's not just in money. It can be with our time as well, and efforts. It can happen. 5 and 6. The man Micah had a shrine and made an epod and household idols. And he consecrated one of his sons who became his priest. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So Micah here, who stole the money or silver and gave it back to his mom, and mom gives him some of it back, and he makes some idols. Well, now he has his own little shrine, his own little place he's going to worship. It's not God he's going to worship, but he makes these little idols for him to worship. And not only does he do that, he needs a priest. If he's got this little place of worship, he needs a priest to come in. So he gets one of his sons. He makes him a priest. So he's got everything going his way. He's got his own place of worship. He's got his own idols. He's got his own priest. What could go wrong with that? What could be wrong with that? So here he is, knowing that this is not right, but yet he's given his worship to this idol shrine place that he's built. And of course, in verse 6, this is before the kings came about, and everybody did what was right in his own eyes. So everybody's doing that. They did it a lot, and these judges would come in, set them straight, then they'd go back in their old ways. So this is a product of going back into their old ways of worshiping these idols. Now, between verses 6 and 9, a young man from Bethlehem comes to the house of Micah. He visits. And Micah invites him in to stay with him, and they begin to talk. And Micah finds out that this young man is from the tribe of Levi. And Micah has a job for him. Verse 9 and 10. And Micah said to him, this is this young man from Bethlehem, the visitor, the Levite, where did you come from? So he said to him, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am on my way to find a place to stay. And Micah says to him, dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your substance. So the Levite went in. So he makes him a pretty good deal. Micah knows just enough Bible to know that a priest really should come from the tribe of Levi. The Levites were the ones, that's where the priests came from. His son was not a Levite. This Levite shows up, So he employs him to be his priest. I'm going to give you 10 shekels a year, clothes, anything you need. So the Levite says, it's a pretty good deal. I'll take it. And he goes in, he becomes this man's personal priest. And you might also say his counselor as a father. He comes to him. What happens to his son? I thought he was a priest. Well, we don't know what happens to him, but probably he gets rid of him. Don't need you now, my son. And you go back to your old ways. I found a real priest who can really do the job. So you're out of here. And the son's out. Verse 13, Micah feels better about this, having a priest as his son. And Micah said, now I know that the Lord will be good to me since I have a Levite as priest. So he's feeling pretty good. That's right. I have a priest from the right tribe. But what does he want? Who is he worshiping? He's worshiping these idols, things. And this priest is not going to say anything against it because the priest is in a pretty good shape here. He's got it made, got a pretty good income. Clothes are provided for. Meals are provided for. Everything he needs. He's not going to tell this man, you're wrong in what you're doing. But Micah here feels pretty good about it. And what we see here, just thinking that we have favor with God doesn't mean that we have favor with God. Only doing a portion of what God says is not what God wants. He wants us to do all. He wants us to worship in the correct way, the right way, live the right way, and not just half and half. But some people feel that way. They feel that if I can just worship God in the partly, do a little bit, everything's good. And that's not the case. So that's how chapter 17 ends. And 18 picks up. We have the same family here going on. But something's about to take place with Micah. 18 and verse 1. In those days, there was no king in Israel. And in those days, the tribe of Danites was seeking an inheritance for itself to dwell in. For until that day, their inheritance among the tribes of Israel had not fallen to them. Now, this verse makes us think that this is happening early in the book of Judges, maybe even during the time of Joshua, because Joshua was the one that gave all the tribes their land. He divided them up. You have this and this and this. Or as of yet, Dan, tribe of Dan, they were looking for theirs, still thinking about it. What are we going to get? So this seems to be early on in the book of Judges, or maybe the latter part of Joshua when this event is taking place. So they're looking. They're wanting their inheritance. Where are we going to get? So here's what they do in verse 2. So the children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their territory, men of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. And they said to them, go search the land. So they went to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. So they're going out here. We think this is the land we're going to get. We're going to like it. And they go and they come across Micah. And they're staying with him. Remember, Micah has his own priest. He has his own idols. His own little place of worship. He has everything he thinks he needs. He's thinking, boy, God is really blessing me because of the great things I'm doing. These men, these 5 men who are spies, really, they're going and they're going to stay with him. Verses 3 and 4. While they were at the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside and said to him, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? And what do you have here? And he said to them, thus and so Micah did for me, has hired me, and I have become his priest. So these 5 men, these spies who were staying at Micah's house, they recognized this priest. They first recognized his voice. We know you. Where are you from? And they began to talk, and what are you doing here? Why aren't you in Bethlehem or somewhere Oh, man, well, Michael, he put me on the payroll. I'm his priest. Sounds pretty good. Well, since he is a priest, they got a request of him, verses 5 and 6. So they said to him, "Please inquire of God that we may know whether the journey on which we go will be prosperous." And the priest said to them, "Go in peace. The presence of the Lord be with you on your way." So how are we going to do on this journey? We're doing this spying. Is it going to go well for us? And the priest says, "Sure, go ahead. You're going to do well. You're going to do well on your travels here." So the spies, they go out, and they do everything they're supposed to do as spies, and they go back home, and they report what they have found. And in verse 9 and 10, so they said, these spies, "Arise, let us go up against them. For we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Would you do nothing? Do not hesitate to go and enter to possess the land. When you go, you will come to a secure people and a large land. For God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is on the earth." So they come back to good report. We need to go ahead immediately and take this land. It's ours for the taking. God's going to give it to us. So 600 men get ready, and they take off to this land. And they're going to take it. Any enemy that's there, they're going to defeat them. So 600 are going on their journey. Verse 14, then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brethren, "Do you know that there are in these houses an ephod, household items, a carved image, and a molded image? Now therefore consider what you should do." So the 600 men go. These 5 spies are with them, sort of guide them along the way. And they come to the house of Micah, or pretty close. And the 5 men say, "You know what's in this house? You got some gold or silver in this house, all these molded images, carved images. And what should you do about it? What are you going to do about it?" Well, what they're going to do is they're going to go and clean it out. What these 600 men are going to do. And verse 18, they do. They clean it out. And when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the molded image, and the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" And that priest is still there. "What are you doing taking our gods? What are you doing?" Well, he knows what they're doing. And verse 19, they make a deal with this priest. And they said to him, "Be quiet and put your hand over your mouth and come with us. Be a father and a priest to us. It is better for you to be a priest to the household of one man, or you be a priest to the tribe and the family and a family in Israel." So the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the household idols and the carved image and took his place among the people. So these 600, they make him a deal. "You come with us. You could be here with one man, or you could be a priest of a whole tribe, a whole group of us." And he doesn't have to think very long about it. I'll take you up on it. And he's the one that gets the idols and the images out and carries them with him. He carries them along. So he sees, I can make a better living here among this tribe than I can among this one person. Money begins to talk. I guarantee it's what it is. Have you ever heard a preacher say, he's in this one particular place, he's working, and all of a sudden he's leaving. And he says, "Well, God called me to this new work. God called me." Now, you know what called him? Money, pocketbook, yeah. They offered him more money. And that's what called him. Don't think that God whispered in his ear and all of a sudden he hears this little voice. No. Money called him. That's what it is. And that's what got this priest. Money called him. And he's gone. He's gone with them. So everything out of Micah's house is empty. Gone. Here's what they take in verse 21. Then they turned and departed and put the little ones, they took children. There's some children in Micah's house. Put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods in front of them. And when they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. So they just cleaned everything out. Children, maybe even grandchildren, livestock, anything, they took it. Like the Grinch that stole Christmas. They took it all. Well, Micah, they take after him. What are you doing? You're not leaving us anything. And they catch up with them, want to know what's going on. Verse 23, and they called out to the children of Dan. So they turned around and said to Micah, what ails you that you have gathered such a company? What's wrong? What are you following us for? What do you want? They want to know what's going on as well. Why are you doing this? And here's what Micah says in verse 24. So we said, you have taken away my gods, which I have made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now what more do I have? How can you say to me that what ails you? Notice the household here of Micah, whoever's talking here, the first thing he says, you've taken my gods. Didn't say anything about the children. You've taken my gods. That's how much they thought of them. You took my priest. Didn't say anything about the children or anything else in that house. Well, there's nothing else left. That's what he's saying here. How can you say, why am I here? There's nothing left. Nothing. Then verse 25, and the children of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you and you lose your life with the lives of your household. The house that be wives, I guess, of these men. Then the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. Again, these people of Dan, these 600 men, don't you try to overtake us. You'll lose your life. If you don't lose it, you will. So, old Micah goes back to his house, tucks his tail, he goes back. 27, so they took the things that Micah had made and the priests who had belonged to him and went to Lachish, to a people quiet and secure. And they struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. So here's these people of Laish, calm, quiet people. And these 600 men take the city and burn it down to the ground. And verse 29, and they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city formerly was Laish. So now they got their land. Now they're going to build them a city, and this is their land where they're going to be. That's their home. In verse 30 and 31, then the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of captivity of the land. They set up for themselves Micah's carved image, which he made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. So they didn't worship God. They began to worship these idols and things that they captured. God wasn't on their mind. And Shiloh that's the last place we find the tabernacle. The tabernacle was with Moses there in the 40 years of wandering, and then they went to the promised land. They had the tabernacle, and well, it ends up right here in Shiloh, and that's where it stayed. No more. So the tribe of Dan gained a lot. Micah, he lost everything. He thought he's going to have it made. Had all this gold his mother gave back to him, and she said, "You're going to be blessed with it," but he lost it all. Had nothing. And yet Dan gained it all, but they didn't use it properly, what they had taken. So that's one of the stories that's involved in the book of Judges. There are 17 and 18. Where do you plug it in at? I'm not sure, but it's this part that God wants us to know and understand what happened, how Dan got their land, and how men of that time, the people of that time, were doing whatever was right in their own eyes. Whatever they wanted to do, they were doing. Next week, we'll look at another thing that happened. This one I'm thinking is pretty gruesome, what took place. And didn't go well. So we'll see what happens next week to these people. Any comment on Micah and Dan? Yeah, right there. Yeah, they start building their tribe. They got their land. They got a city. Here they go.